I think my story begins before I was born. My grandfather actually started, I was also an apocalyptic cult that was very end times, but my grandfather started it long before I was born. In fact, before my mom was born. So he started in 1931, and he started this organization which he called Boys Christian League. And he took a group of boys. He would do a boys Bible band, took them camping. He had been a Boy Scout leader. As he was gathering boys for a variety of reasons, at some point he felt pressure to get married. So he found this pianist who had been to a Bible college, a Quaker woman who would become my grandmother, married her in 1936, and then went on to have 5 children with her, the 4th of which was my mother. I feel like that's where my story began, really, is when my mother was born, because as the first girl in the family, she really changed, or would eventually change, the nature of the cult. The cult used to be all male, and it was men who would devote themselves to my grandfather for their entire lives. There was no marriage. It was a celibate cult. There was no children. And it wasn't until my mom was in her 20s that her father realized that he was going to have a spinster old maid on his hands if he didn't allow his daughter to marry. So he married his daughter off to one of his top boys who was in his 30s. Like, it wasn't like a super young man. And that was my father, and my parents were the very first wedding that took place in this cult. And then they allowed for other weddings, and so then children started being born. I was the 4th child to be born at the cult, the 2nd biological family member of my family. So my mother was the first of my grandfather's children to have children. I was the 2nd child born to my parents. But there were other cult members who started having children. And that's kind of what made the cult go off the rails, I think, because once you have children, things are so much more complicated. I think that in the cult I was born into, I'll say short version is that I think being born there was really different than people who chose to join. But the cult did prey, and I'll use that word intentionally, on children. And so they brought young children for a variety of reasons, a lot of what they called broken families. But in the 1970s, where there were a lot of, where divorce became more prevalent, and a lot of women didn't have father figures for their sons because a lot of fathers weren't involved after divorce, they sent their boys to be raised up in this highly intense, athletic, extreme organization, which we all called the Field. And I was raised in a very masculine culture of boys becoming men. And decades of that had taken place before I was born.